Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have Coach Roel here with us. And I know, the colder temperatures are coming. It's been a little bit snowy here in Canada. And a lot of us, between the economy and the climate, we might be starting to think about doing some investing southern, in warmer destinations. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring in a good friend of mine. Roel and I, let's see. So we met in Rich Dad, I don't want to talk about it, but over a decade ago, uh, when I was teaching a lease options course. And
When we were
Roel,
19 years old.
yes, I was 12 at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And and so Roel was a student in my lease options course, and then Roel had enjoyed such success with his investing that he became also a trainer for Rich Dad, and so we were colleagues for a number of years. And then in 2017, Roel and his lovely wife with their two kids moved down to Florida and began to build another portfolio there. So I thought it would be a great opportunity, grab a tea, grab a glass of wine, whatever it is you'd like, but let's learn a little bit more from Coach Roel about how and why he invests in Florida. Thank you so much for joining us today, Roel.
The pleasure is all mine, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. It's a little bit surreal for me, so thank you.
It's awesome. Well, it's great to be able to see you again, despite being, thousands of kilometers apart. Now, you had built a good sized portfolio in Southern Ontario. You've now moved to Florida. You've done short term rentals. You've done some flipping, buy, fix, and hold. Now you're moving into land development and new builds. Plus, you're a licensed realtor, which obviously helps you with your investing activities. Um, I'm excited to have you teach us more about the differences between, investing in Canada and investing in the US and where the opportunities are. So do you want to just jump in, or I know you're going to do sort of the formal introduction on all your background, but it's just such a pleasure to work with you again.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll be happy to just jump right on in, and then I'll speak for, I don't know, maybe about 30 minutes or less, and then feel free to interrupt me along the way or ask. We'll have an open conversation afterwards.
That sounds awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I will let you go nuts.
So here's the obligatory background slide. My name's Roel Sarmago. My media alter ego is Coach Roel. I'm the author of Undiscovered Riches, How to Find Your Hidden Wealth. It's not a best-selling book, but it's a moderately selling book on Amazon. Originally from Canada, as Elizabeth mentioned, I am still a Canadian certified financial planner. I was a traditional financial advisor for over 8 years. And to date, I've stopped counting. I've invested over 100,000 in my own coaches, trainings, and mentors. A big chunk of that was back in the Rich Dad days, but it seems to be a bit of an addiction where the more I learn, the more I earn. And one of my claims to fame is that I quote unquote retired at the age of 37 years old from financial services in 2012. And I credit real estate investing for that. As again, Elizabeth mentioned, we relocated our two young kids, ages 3 and 1 at the time, down to Orlando. And we never looked back. So since then, we also acquired a traditional storefront, a kitchen remodeling business in 2019, expanded into self-storage in 2020, exited that one, and yeah, just enjoying the lifestyle down here. So just give you a bit of context there. So I thought we'd start off, Elizabeth, with a little bit of a lighthearted, a couple of internet memes that I found entertaining. This is one of my favorite ones. Meanwhile, in Canada, annual meeting of the Summer Tires Club, and contrast that with dreaming of a white Christmas at a white sandy beach somewhere in Florida. Boss be like, you still coming to work, right? And this guy's buried under what, 3, 4, 5 feet of snow. And then also the comment of, you're killing yourself for a job that would replace you within a week if you drop dead. So take care of yourself. Balance, right? On a positive note, I haven't seen any mosquitoes in weeks. And a motivational one from one of my web pages, our Facebook pages: stop thinking about what could go wrong and focus on what will go right. And that's a stock photo, but I have a lot of photos on my phone that look just like that one on the right-hand side. And I wanted to share something personal, actually, right off the bat. I was just telling Elizabeth before we started recording, was about a year and a half ago, this was literally one of my vision boards. And it was very difficult for me to figure out, like, how can I really help Canadians? Because, not to brag, but we're in a good place. Like Elizabeth and I, we're in a good place now. And so the challenge sometimes is, how do we inspire ourselves to push ourselves further? And then so I put together this little collage, and I had this posted up in many different places. And I was thinking, you know what? This is part of the legacy I want to be able to leave behind. So this inspired me. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. And happily, I can report that I'm actually doing it. So it's come to fruition. Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. So why are you here? I'm going to attempt to read your minds through the interwebs here. Perhaps you want the realistic ability to fly south to Florida every winter. Perhaps you want your Florida trips to be as tax efficient as possible. Or maybe you want to grow your existing real estate portfolio to include one or more profitable Florida properties. On a little bit more of a cautionary note, or not as positive note, maybe you're frustrated with government mandated rent controls. Maybe you're also frustrated with lopsided tenancy laws. I know, especially in Ontario, it could take quite a long time to legally and properly navigate the eviction process. Or maybe also you're finding it nearly impossible to find good cash flowing deals these days. I know that was the writing on the wall that I saw even back in 2012, 2013, when I just started. So remember, 2017, that's when we decided to fly down, relocate to Orlando, and so much more so today. Just want to lay down some foundations of where I'm coming from. So I call these the Snowbird Philosophies, which is not an exhaustive list. One of my favorite sayings is, if it is to be, it is up to me. And that's just a comment on, who do you want to credit your results to? Do you want to credit your results to your coach, which is nice, but then also, do you want to credit your failures to your coach as well? I think it really needs to be, you credit yourself, you're 100% for your own results, and it empowers you to be able to actually take charge of the direction you want to go in. Either or versus both and. The question there is, are you ready to leave Canada? Funny thing is, my wife Sonia, who coaches with Elizabeth, is when we were coming down to Florida, we were preparing to just go on an exploratory business trip to find one property. She was often asking me, like, are we really going to leave Canada? And this is us driving. Picture this. We loaded up the white minivan with a 3-year-old and the 1-year-old, and as much stuff as we could possibly pack into it. And then we drove due south to Florida. And I had to spend like 21 hours on the road with this lady, my wife. But every so often she would ask me, are we really going to leave Canada? Like, we're really doing this? I'm like, honey, who's leaving Canada? It's not like we're revoking our citizenship or giving up our passport. We're just going to check it out, and we're going to spend a month, see how it goes, maybe 2 months, and then we're going to come back to Canada. So, nobody's leaving. So I had to remind her constantly that we're choosing to have both and. You don't have to say, do I want Canada or do I want Florida? No, we can have literally the best of both worlds, and you get to choose what best parts you do like, right? And then also, when would now be the right time? I know Elizabeth had mentioned to me a few times that a number of people in your community have been thinking about investing south of the border, and thinking about, it would be nice to be able to have properties somewhere in a warmer climate. And so for those of you who've been thinking that, I encourage you to ask yourself, when would now finally be the right time? Are you done paying your dues? I will put forth an answer and say you are done paying your dues. There's no more need to wait anymore. There's no more someday maybe. If you're watching this, Coach Roel is here to give you a gentle nudge in the behind and say, you know what, now is the right time. And then also understanding the difference between simple versus easy. So what I'll share with you is, I'll forewarn you, it's painfully simple, the implementation of which is not necessarily easy. So why Florida? Here's some logical arguments. Global trends. The United States, love them or hate them. Canadians, Canada, were kind of like the devil's little brother, right? So the US is still the #1 largest economy in the world. It's the height of capitalism. It's like our modern day Rome. So if you can't make it here, you can't make it anywhere, sort of thing. Still, the US is the number one place that people want to immigrate to and do business in. But also, forget about outside the US borders. Think about the northern states that also are experiencing snow, like Vermont, Ohio, Minnesota. Are these states, or, I'm embarrassed to say I don't really know my US geography, but the northern states nonetheless. All of those Americans are also looking down south. So there's been a long standing trend of people migrating, Americans migrating from the northern states down in the same time zone directly down south. So everyone, New York, Boston, Massachusetts, Ohio, et cetera, Vermont, they're all looking at going further down south as well. So that's a factor of people moving to Florida. It's business-friendly climate. Not getting into so much political stuff, but the pandemic is not that far away behind us. There was a lot of rolling lockdowns in Canada, while whether you like him or not, or approved of him or not, the governor of Florida pretty much kept the Florida economy wide open. And so my wife and I, we were enjoying your very privileged position, our very fortunate position during the pandemic, that our businesses were still running and we barely missed a beat. But that's just kind of the nature of Florida. Also, the state income taxes, or lack thereof. Did you know, Elizabeth, that Florida actually has no state income tax?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. In Canada, we have provincial tax and then federal tax. Same thing in the US. There's state tax and then there's federal tax. So for the state of Florida, there is no state tax, right? So no personal state tax, no corporate state tax. So that's where I kind of jest and say, the poor are getting poorer and the rich are moving to Florida. Like, case in point, again, like him or not, Trump relocated his residence down to the state of Florida, probably because it's a tax haven for Americans. So that's a huge deal. And they're seeing a lot of people from New York, a lot of wealthy people moving down to the state of Florida for a similar reason. So it is an attractor for people with money, essentially. The tourism industry, the theme parks are always going to be big. There's two oceans. Florida is essentially an island connected to the mainland, which is the literal definition of a peninsula. It's not an island at all. So on the west, we've got the Gulf of Mexico. On the east, we've got the Atlantic Ocean, and you're never more than 2 hours drive away from, or put it this way, you're always less than a 2-hour drive to an ocean, to salt water. Technology hub. I don't know if you knew this, Elizabeth, but Miami, the corridor between Miami and Orlando, there are public-private partnerships right in that corridor designed to attract innovative startup companies. So every city in the world wants to attract technology companies, right? So, but not very many have the resources to begin with. So with the money and the attraction with Miami and Orlando and everybody in between, there's a concerted effort to turn that corridor into a technology hub. Also, the conference industry. This is really cool because, Las Vegas is Sin City, right? That's trade shows, conferences, etc. Did you know, I love saying it this way, but did you know that the greater Orlando area has the second most hotel sleeping rooms next to Las Vegas, Nevada? And for that reason, because it's family friendly, it's the theme parks and all that. So after the Great Recession of 2008, 9, 10, the powers that be here made a concerted effort to say, hey, we should try to attract trade shows. And the attractor is, Las Vegas is Sin City, but we're family friendly. So host your trade show, have your conference, have your corporate trainings here, invite your family, let them stay at the hotel room while you're at your conference or trade show, and then afterwards stick around and enjoy our world-class theme parks, a.k.a. spend money with us. So, and they're doing a really good job of that. So they're chipping away at the conference industry, chipping away at Las Vegas's market share in that sense. And then also the real estate market. Real estate market is quite balanced here. It's quite foreign, like literally it's foreign for Canadians, but it's weird in the sense that I feel, at least, it's a little bit more balanced. Because, Elizabeth, how we have in Ontario, there's the green belt. It's the no or low density development zone, which is great for the environment, great for personal satisfaction and have green space. But everything inside that green belt. So for those of you who don't know, the green belt basically runs from around Durham to York region, north of Toronto, all the way around to like St. Catharines, down and even into the Golden Horseshoe to Niagara region. So everything inside that, bordered by Lake Ontario, is essentially an artificial island. And what I've heard it called is the Manhattanization of Toronto. And that's a big reason why, as to there's all these condos that have been going up for the last 10 years, because the Ontario government literally does not want people, wants to stem urban sprawl. So what they are forced to do, because there's all these other people coming in from out of the country, from other provinces coming into Toronto because they're following the jobs, right, is they have to house them somehow. So that's why the single family ground floor inventory is gone so crazy expensive over the last 10 years. And then also that's why you see all these condo towers going up, because everyone's piling into this artificial island. Where are we going to put them? So in all of the major markets in Florida, we don't have that. There is no artificial. So it's very capitalistic. Unfortunately, for the environmentally conscious, there is a lot of urban sprawl, but it's not like every city in Florida is a concrete jungle. There's actually a lot of wide open space. So there's a lot of room to expand, but still keeping a lot of green space. So it's more of a balanced, healthy market. And what I mean by that is it's more predictable in that sense. So I thought this would be fun to show what can $1 million Canadian converted to US dollars, about $750,000, what could that get you in Toronto or in some other markets versus different markets in Florida. I know it's not a fair apples to apples comparison, but it just gives you a bit of context for an idea of this. So in Toronto, this is a raised bungalow. Looks like there's a half basement there, which is probably a converted to an in-law suite of some sort, a separate unit. 3+1 is usually what alerts me to that, 2 bath. So I imagine it's 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 bathroom, and then downstairs is a 1 bedroom and a 1 bathroom with a carport on the side. So that's $1 million now in Toronto, Canadian. Convert that to US. Oh my goodness, look at that beauty of a property in Orlando. That one is about $750,000, 6 bedrooms, 3 baths, almost 4,000 square feet, right? Let's check another one. So another one in Toronto, about $1 million, similar raised bungalow. And then in West Palm Beach, which is just north of Fort Lauderdale on the Atlantic coast, you could get this beauty for $750,000, 4 bedroom, 4 bath, 3,400 square feet. Let's take another look at another one then. Again, another one on Alexis Boulevard in Toronto compared to Cape Coral, Florida. And here's the stats on that. Again, it's around $750,000, 4 bedroom, 3 bath, just shy of 2,000 square feet, but you're on water. I don't know if you knew this, Elizabeth, but just probably about 8 years ago, a little bit after I met you, I had attended a similar sort of investing in the US type of thing. And they showed us Cape Coral. And if you look at Google Maps and you zoom in a little bit, you'll see all these lines of blue. And what Cape Coral, Florida is, it's a huge network. It's like Venice, but it's a huge network of canals. And there's a whole bunch of residential houses on these canals, which allows you to have a boat, literally a dock and a boat in your backyard. And if you navigate the canal system, you can actually get out to the Gulf of Mexico and then actually go to the real Venice in Italy. It's just ridiculous. So there's places like that as well in Fort Lauderdale. There's a whole bunch of canals and stuff. So imagine having a house on the water. You could park your boat in the back. You could park your SUV in the front or your electric vehicle. And then you could hop into your boat in your backyard and then get out to the ocean. It's just crazy. But these are properties that you and I might actually live in. These are not investment properties. So you and I might live in one of these properties to have that cross-border Snowbird investor lifestyle that I like to promote. But now we're getting into price points where my wife and I would look towards for investments, where the rental prices are a little bit closer to the purchase price. So here's a property in Palmetto, Florida. It's about $300,000 US, about 400,000 Canadian. And there's one in Kissimmee. Kissimmee, Florida is the city bordering Orlando to the south. So actually, if you ever stay at a short-term rental, probably it's in the city of Kissimmee, which is closer to the theme parks than the theme parks like Disney, Universal, etc. Those are all in Orlando proper, but it's in really the far reaches of Orlando. So Kissimmee is actually the area that is closer to all the theme parks. So if you're ever thinking about buying a property down and you want to take advantage of the theme park traffic, Kissimmee is something that you punch into your searches. So let's take it a step further. 250,000 US is about 334 Canadian. So here's one, Leesburg, Florida, just north of Orlando, so central Florida. And that one's 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square feet. Here's one in Boynton Beach. I forget where that is, but that's a townhouse there. And that one is 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 240,000. So the rental prices for these, in just from guesstimate of when I was looking at these closely, they would probably be around the $1,800 range, if not more than just over 2,000. So those of you who can do the quick mental math will be like, that's worth putting on a short list at least. So let's look at that further. And then let's go even further down in price, 150,000 US dollars, which is about 200,000 Canadian. I mean, you could refinance your home, get a HELOC, and then buy this beauty cash. Winter Haven is in between Orlando and Tampa. So if this is Orlando and this is Tampa, southwest of Orlando, there's a highway called the I-4, the Interstate 4. And then in the middle of that highway, just off that in the middle, is Winter Haven. So there's Legoland. It's still about a 30-minute drive because you got the highway to Disney and to Universal and all that. It's not really a vacation destination, but with urban sprawl, remember, Elizabeth, we were talking, Hamilton used to be, it's like, who wants to go to Hamilton? Then over the last 12 years, Hamilton's like, oh my gosh, we missed the boat on Hamilton. So Winter Haven is kind of similar to that. It's almost, we know what I really think of it as. It's almost like I've gone back in time. So Elizabeth, if we go back 10, 12 years when you first started investing, knowing what we know now about Barrie, about Hamilton, about all these secondary markets, Oshawa, the Schwa, one of the last bastions of where you could get affordable properties, not so much anymore. But that's what I feel like Central Florida, because that's my specialty, but there's definitely so many examples around Florida you could find this. So Winter Haven, 150,000 US, look at that. It's a beautiful property, right? Doesn't have an indoor garage, but it's got a double carport. Ooh, pretty fancy. Plant City is further west along that I-4, closer to the outskirts of Tampa. And there's another one, 150,000 US dollars, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600 square feet. That's not bad, right? 1,700 square feet is pretty good. You got a backyard, you got a lawn, double garage. And then here's some more examples. Here's an old style American home, Waldo, Florida. Now you're getting into like maybe the tertiary and what's the fourth market out. So I don't remember where that is, but this is the idea of the kind of inventory that can be found in Florida if you're willing to even go further out. So how do you get started? I always like to start off with the first two rules of real estate investing that has served me over the years. And that is, number one, make money in the buy. And I'll go back to this. Number two is to add value, also known as forced appreciation. So let me give you a visual. If we make sure that we adhere to rule number one and you make your money in the buy, then you're safe. You're buying at a discount, right? This is a big deal. Then the more money in the buy that you can make, the safer you are, no matter what you do afterwards. And I'll show you an actual case study with nice pictures in just a moment. So you make your money in the buy, you force the appreciation by adding value. That delta, so you make your money in the buy, you force the value up, that difference now, that's basically money out of thin air. And then you can do whatever you want with that. Either you sell it or you refinance it, you pull it out, and then you rinse and repeat. Imagine the next one. You make money in the buy in the next one. You force the value up, take that equity, do another. You see what I mean? Over and over. And that's how we've really been able to scale up in 5 short years. We came down in October of 2017. And it's a little bit crazy to realize when I reflect on it, how much we've done in these 5 short years. And these two rules have really served us. Simple, but is it necessarily easy? Because here, if you haven't already started thinking these kind of questions, then let me put forth some questions that you should probably consider before you head down to Florida. So can I get a US mortgage as a Canadian? Where do I buy my first investment property? How would I know if it's a good place to invest? Should I buy in my personal name or corporation? What's an LLC? I saw that on YouTube. Do I need that? How do I choose a real estate agent? What if it's an off-market deal? I've heard we want to get wholesale deals. That's where you get the best discounts. How do I even find one in Florida from Canada? How do I know if it's a good deal? How do I know if it will cash flow? What if I need to renovate it? How about hurricanes? Okay. Hurricanes, I used to poo-poo this because statistically, significant hurricanes has been very rare in Florida, but Hurricane Ian just came through, and then Tropical Storm Nicole came through, and there was some very real damage on the coastal regions, but not in Central Florida. And I'm so grateful that we did take the time to have a plan to think ahead of time. While everyone is tempted to be like, I want Florida. If I think Florida, I want a house on the beach. Well, what about global warming, beach erosion, hurricanes, those sort of things? By the time any sort of depression or active weather system hits Central Florida, I'm talking Orlando, Winter Haven, Ocala to the north, it's all Central Florida. They've usually weakened to either a tropical storm or less. So it's basically a lot of rain and a little bit of wind by the time it reaches us. Unfortunately, on the coastal regions, that's where you got to make a personal and or business decision, right? So I like the fact that we're here. I'm happy to report that with the last two storms that came through, exactly zero, none of our properties, including our personal home, was damaged at all. We didn't have any repairs to be done. So there you have that. So fortunately, that worked out for us. But otherwise, hurricanes are very, very, like, look it up on Wikipedia, the number of hurricanes that really made landfall. So it was only until recently that that became more of a concern with what happened last time. And then there's so many other questions, blah, 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 blah. So it could be really kind of chaotic and mind-bending. But good news, let me simplify it for you. So wipe that slate clean for just a moment. How to get started investing in Florida before you fly down. So there's a lot that you can do that can prepare you and set you up right for success. 4 simple bullet points here. Number 1, find the money. How do you find the money? There are, I'll just give it to you right now. Every Canadian major bank, oh, not everyone, but let me rhyme them off. TD, RBC, BMO, for sure, have partnerships with a similar US bank. So it's actually a licensing deal. It's not a Canadian bank, but it's a US bank. But anyways, all of them have a program where Canadians can get a US mortgage to buy US real estate. Okay, it works very similar to getting your personal residential mortgage in Canada. You have to go through all the underwriting and all that stuff. The caveat is they want it in your personal name still. And that's, the problem of all traditional banks that we've known and loved for years. So there's that. And then they're also going to need, once they find out that it's an investment property, not only do they want it in your personal name, but they're going to ask for 30 to 40% down payment, right? But you can get that. The alternative is you refinance your home, or you get a HELOC on your Canadian home and you buy the whole thing with cash. There's a lot of other creative financing strategies that are available as well. Give you an example, you could rent a property, rental arbitrage. We talked about that, Elizabeth. You could rent a property here. Legally, a Canadian can rent a property from a US landlord, and then you just let them know, I'm going to then sub-rent this to somebody else on a short-term basis. So that's a very cool rental arbitrage strategy. And there's so many more creative financing strategies that you probably have seen on YouTube here and there that's not applicable in Canada, because that was my experience. It's like, oh, cool, I want to do this. But then you find out, oh, that's only applicable to the US. So the good thing is all those YouTube stuff that you hear on the internet actually are applicable here. You just got to know how to do it. Step number 2, I would recommend, is then you choose a market. Once you have the money ready and the financing idea, then you choose a market. And it's not just anywhere in Florida. That's what so many people come to me and they say, I don't care where, it's all warmer than here. So just find me the cheapest property down in Florida. Well, it's like if you go to a travel agent and you say, hey, I just want to travel more. Well, where do you want to go? How do I know where to book you? So literally, ideally, you get it down to maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 zip codes, because then you're going to need a realtor or somebody to help you research those zip codes and actually buy one property on a street within that zip code. So you got to let's get realistic about it, basically. Let's get it down to the nitty gritty. Then once you've got your zip code, then you start to look for people who actually work this market, realtors, lenders, appraisers, property inspectors, et cetera, all these power team members who are local down here in Florida. Then once you have that, or at least you have a solid momentum towards that, achieving those things, then you can start finding a property. And even then, you could still look on the internet for properties. MLS, you can get that. That's not my favorite place. But then you could also look for like wholesalers, right? How do you find wholesalers? Google them, Facebook. There's an abundance of them. So the first 3 steps really don't take that long. Of course, I'm being a little bit, kind of feeding into the hypocriticalness of this, is don't look at properties when I just showed you a whole bunch of properties, but look at it for fun. But don't necessarily put an offer in and look to buy a property until you have these first 3 steps at least begun on your journey. Now, I like to share with you a case study. I like to nickname this one Cayman Way, the house that credit cards paid for. And here's some before and after pictures. So when we were just inspecting it, that's the picture on the left. On the right is when we fixed it up and then make it available on the market. And the secrets here: painting, flooring, and landscaping, right? That the good old three aspects of cosmetic renovations. That's exactly what we applied here. And I learned this way back in the day with the likes of Elizabeth and Emmett. Here's another one. If you walk in and you turn left, here's the front room there. This is what it looked like when we marketed it. There you go. Painting, flooring, and we trimmed the palm trees out the front window. Painting, flooring, landscaping. Here's the 3rd bedroom in the back. Same sort of deal. Here's the grand room in the middle, nice high ceilings, natural light. And then when we staged it, see, this is marketing, right? This is applicable if you got a marketing background, if you've never done real estate or flipped a house and done this stuff, you can have this background and apply it here. And here's the laundry. It's not even stainless steel, high efficiency stuff. They're brand new and they're pleasant and they're clean. So that's all you really need. You don't need to spend an arm and a leg. This is the master bedroom, a little built-in shelving unit there. And then when we staged it, it looks like that. Here's the bathroom. All we did here was replace the vanity. Here's the secret: IKEA vanity. The mirror was from Target, or as Canadians call it, Target. Locals here, they call it Target. And then the light fixture, Home Depot. Everything else is just cleaned. Here's the kitchen. This is before we bought our kitchen remodeling business, but prior to buying the kitchen remodeling business, we had remodeled dozens and dozens of kitchens on our own. And that's what it looked like there. Granite countertops, and we took a risk with the cabinets, and it actually worked out well. It was very popular amongst potential renters and buyers. And then there's the other side of the kitchen. This is perhaps the biggest one, the biggest contrast. So just cleaning up, just a little bit of landscaping looks like that. And then professional photos, of course. So how about the numbers? So here's the flip exit. So I analyzed 2 scenarios. Do we buy it and buy it to sell right away, or can we buy and hold it? So hold on to your seat here, because these numbers are ridiculous, Elizabeth. Purchase price, $106,000. So this is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath townhouse, not even an end unit. It's a row, it's a middle unit, $106,000. And that includes $6,000, which went to the wholesaler, right? That's the finder's fee. So all in, $106,000 purchase price. Purchase cost, about $3,500. Renovation, $30,000. Holding costs, 4 months. Selling costs, now this is mostly realtors' commissions that we estimated. Selling price, $188,000. So we actually believed and I'm still right to this day, I still stand by it, that the value of the property really was $195,000. We had a buyer agree to that price, but it's kind of like in the US, there's a first-time homebuyer program, similar to Canada's CMHC program. But in the US, so they put down 3% and then they get a loan. That appraiser unfortunately said, no, this is not worth $195,000. It's only worth $188,000. So the buyer's agent said to us, hey, bring down the $7,000, bring down the price by $7,000. We got a deal. I said, sorry, we don't really need to sell that badly. So you come to the table with an extra $7,000 and then we have a deal. So long story short, they backed out. We let them go. We returned their deposit. No harm, no foul. However, had we sold, we would have been $32,762. And you do the math on that. That's pretty darn good on a tiny, tiny little deal like that, right? So we said, no problem. We'll release you from the contract. We're going to go to plan B. And plan B was to hold. So here's the same numbers: purchase price, buy, fix, and hold, part 1 of 2. So purchase price, purchase cost, renovation, holding costs. But here's the key. The ARV appraisal, okay, fine. It's not 195. Let's be conservative and give it that to you. It's 188,000. Because we're not selling it just yet, here's rule number 2, add value, also known as forced appreciation. We just increased our net worth by $47,742 in 4 months. Okay? Total cash, and the reason why it's in quotation marks is it's not really cash, because remember, this is Cayman Way, the house that credit cards paid for. Where did we get our money? Glad you asked. We got it from our Canadian credit cards. We did cash advances on our credit cards, and we emptied our HELOCs, not all of them, but basically that's where we got the money from, converted it from Canadian to US, and then that's how we did this deal to the tune of $140,258. Yes, there was a cost to that, but I'll show you the amount of profit. It's not even a big deal we don't even have to really calculate the actual cost to show that it was still a good deal. So the cash, we got that from borrowed money from our credit cards. Now, the part 2 is we have to rent it out. You saw the pictures, right, Elizabeth? They were gorgeous. So we were able to command the high end of rents in that area. So monthly rent, we got a CEO of his medium-sized company. He had sold his $500,000 house. He and his wife just needed a place to live for like 10 months. And then while they're waiting for their $1 million custom home to be built. So he just needed the place for 10 months. So he wanted a place that was like, everything's fixed up, it's beautiful. Okay, great. So he's willing to pay top of the market rents there. So $1,650, good for us. And if you thought about the purchase price or the all-in price that we had versus the monthly rent, that actually meets the 1% rule, because all in cash invested was 140,000, monthly rent $1,650. That's better than 1%. So great. Property tax, monthly expenses, insurance monthly, HOA, homeowners association, property management, because we're not managing it ourselves, right? We manage the managers. So we pay 10% of the monthly rent to a property manager to take those phone calls, to take care of the repair calls, etc. So the net to us, net operating income with considering no debt for a moment, $1,204 per month. Pretty not bad, right? And that's a cap rate of 10.03% per year. We haven't seen cap rates in Canada since I started with you, Elizabeth, right? So multifamilies were at 10 caps prior to 10 years ago. But here on a tiny deal like this, you could get a 10 cap. And this is, to put in context, this is just prior to the pandemic. So 2019. Now, why Florida? Here's the reasons on the other side of the brain hemisphere as to what convinced me why Florida. 20-degree average year-round temperature, sun, sand, and palm trees, 230 sunny days per year. That's 2 out of every 3 days approximately. It's sunny, like it is. You see the palm tree over my shoulder, right? Not 1, but 2 oceans. Direct flights from Canada. Any major city in Canada has a direct flight to a major city in the US or in Florida for sure. So in that sense, it's not far. What? In the air, 2.5, not even 2.5 hours, less than 2 hours and 15 minutes in the air. Gate to gate, half a day of travel. And you're in your toes are in the sand. 6 cruise ship ports. Pre-pandemic, we were going cruises like it was going out of style, which it was for a while. During the pandemic, we couldn't do cruises. But yeah, if you like the cruise ship lifestyle, there's 6 cruise ship ports all around Florida. Golf, tennis, fishing, 365 days a year of outdoor activities. And did I mention sun, sand, and palm trees, which is my favorite? So typical mistakes to avoid by Canadians: wasting time looking at properties. Yes, I know it's fun to look at properties. We just did that. But if you're really serious and you're like, let's manifest this, let's make this real, I want some Florida in my life, then don't spend too much time looking at properties. If you don't have a plan, then you plan to fail. Coming to Florida too soon, a lot of people will do that. They'll say, hey, I'm going down to Florida. I saw you on the interwebs somewhere. It'd be great if we could meet up. And they've done no legwork, no preparation. So they just want to come down and be like, oh, this is great and beautiful, let's put an offer. And then they're stuck behind the 8 ball because they have no idea what they're doing. So be careful about coming down to Florida too soon. Overpaying for a Florida property. You saw, Elizabeth, that there are properties as little as $150,000 that you can buy. And to Canadians, you think, oh my God, that's cheap, what a great steal. Well, not if every other house on the block is only $100,000. Right? It's all relative. I don't like the term location, but location has some effect on that. It's all relative. So cheap things aren't necessarily good, and good things aren't necessarily cheap. And then buying in your personal name. Same problem as in Canada or anywhere else in the world. I like to encourage people to think of yourself as a business. So don't put it in your personal name. Figure out how to do this through entities. And then also the biggest one is not having a support team on the ground for when you're not in Florida. So all of these things are, and more, but basically these are the biggest mistakes that I've seen Canadians make. So once again, what can you do before you're coming down? So let's bring it back to the positive. Find the money. Figure out the financing. Where are you going to get the money from? Choose a market. Get it down to 1 to 3 zip codes max, ideally. Build a power team. I mean, Google people. Approach people on LinkedIn. Say, hey, I'm looking for somebody who can help me buy a property. I'm an investor. Here's my deal. Let's hop on a Zoom call. Let's network. And then find a property. Then when you can start to go and start pinging people on, hey, you got an off-market deal. I'm a cash buyer, or I'm a Canadian investor coming down to this area. Set up a separate email account, because you'll start to get flooded with offers. And then say, hit me up on my personal email. Share with me your deals. And then that's when I would say, green light, go down to Florida as a business. And that actually opens up a whole other can of worms, which I'll pause there for now. But thanks, eh? There's me and my family in front of our house there with our palm trees. That's always been a dream of mine. But yeah, so any questions, comments, criticisms?
I have definitely some questions. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing more about, your journey and your learnings over the last 5 years. That's been really insightful. It's also really inspired me to come down and visit you. Do you have a guest room that I can stay in?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And if you come down in January, we'll have our pool. The guest room is right beside the pool.
That's so nice.
So
Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of rapid fire with the questions here. So one of the key determining factors about the longevity of a market is always population and migration, right? So
yeah.
can you tell us what's going on in Florida with the population? Because I know there's been a lot of movement between the states, especially, during COVID and like the government rules, people were leaving, people were coming. Like where's the Florida population right now?
It's growing. In a nutshell, it's growing. So depending on which article you read, you're going to hear a mass exodus from Florida, but you also see a mass influx. But if you look at just the Census Bureaus, the statistics there, majority of Florida cities are actually growing. The state in general is net positive.
Okay, that's good. And the predicted trends over the next, 10, 15, 20 years are all upwards population growth?
They are, especially that actually saw an uptick after the pandemic, or even during the pandemic, because Florida was pretty much wide open for majority of the pandemic. And then people, I guess maybe they had an existential realized revelation, and a lot of people, especially younger people, were talking about workforce age people, were like, why are we doing this? And we could do remote work now. So if I can work from home in the snow, why can't I work from Florida in the sun? So a
Hmm.
lot of people with the popularity of remote work are also choosing to move down to where it's warmer.
Gotcha. Awesome. I know I once upon a time before I was a full-time investor, I worked for State Farm. And of course, State Farm is an international company. And I know that there were some challenges, and there have been at various points in terms of insurance, being able to insure properties in Florida. Is that still a concern, or is insurance relatively easy to obtain now on rental properties?
It is less easy. It is a concern, but it's not impossible. So I kind of look at it as akin to, it's just another expense. As an investor, it just means that I can't pay the top dollar anymore. So my
Mhm.
offer price has to be a little bit lower because my insurance. You pull one lever down, another one kind of goes up, and so that's the way I see it. We've still been able to acquire properties this year, and then we're still looking at some now. It's just we have to increase the expense of insurance, but it's not
Gotcha.
impossible by any stretch of the
Okay.
imagination, which
That's
actually kind
awesome.
of bodes well for investors, because there was a bit of like an uptick and a trend, as was all across the country, North America as well, but it's kind of plateaued a little bit as well because of the interest rates being hiked up plus insurance. So as a buyer, it actually kind of bodes well for us, because then it's also this time of year, interest rates are higher, insurance is more expensive, so we can actually um, get more money in the buy with those factors.
Gotcha. Love it. Um, a lot of the markets that you showed us, and I love that, you and Sonia were so strategic when you chose your markets that you wanted to invest in. And a lot of the markets you showed us were sort of central Florida, so not as prone to some of the natural disasters and that kind of thing. Can you still do short-term rentals on those more interior markets, or would someone be looking really more at a long-term rental strategy for the interior properties?
Mostly long-term rentals. Short-term rentals, you can do them, but it's actually good, because the ones who would go for more of those interior markets, the secondary, tertiary markets, you can still
Mhm.
do short-term rentals, no problem. Uh, you're probably going to get more like midterm renters, so not short terms. You're not going to get like a 2 or 3 day
A
stay,
weekend.
even one week.
Yeah,
You're going to get probably more like a month to 3 months. You're
gotcha.
actually going to get more snowbirds. So interestingly enough, we think that as Canadians, oh, we're the world's snowbird country. No,
Mhm.
there's actually more American snowbirds than there are Canadian snowbirds, right? Just population wise, because it's all those northern states that all have
Yeah.
people, and they also want to come down. So in one of our properties, in one of those secondary slash tertiary markets, yeah, we get traveling nurses. We get, but the majority of them were snowbirds, American snowbirds, staying for one. The longest we've had was 5 months. So between one and
Wow.
5 months, which is beautiful, right?
Yeah. And they're great tenants too. I mean, you can't ask for better than, homeowners who just want a nice place to hang out for a few months in the warmth.
For
We're
sure.
seeing a lot of municipalities in Canada now are rebelling against the whole Airbnb short-term thing. They're either outright banning them, they're bringing in licensing. There's a lot of areas of Canada now that are much less favorable for short-term rentals. Have you seen that anywhere in Florida, or are the municipalities or the states and the states, but the what are they called? Counties. Are they much more amenable to short-term rentals and less controlling?
Much more amenable to short-term rentals. As it stands right now, the state of Florida, it short-term rentals are legal and allowed for the whole state of Florida. Now, let's take that with a grain of salt, because there's different levels, right? So the state of Florida has said you cannot disallow short-term rentals altogether. So that's the blanket black and white statement. Now let's get down to like Orange County, which is where Orlando is. And took a little while for me to wrap my head around. I was like, what's a county? And what's the difference between a county and a city? So there's the United States, then there's the state, Florida, then there's the county, then there's the city, and then there's the subdivision. So that's going from big to small. So then the city of Florida, for example, regulates it. They don't outlaw it, outlaw short-term rentals altogether, but they want to regulate it. So they say that at least 51% of your property has to be lived in and occupied by the homeowner. So you could do up to 49% by square footage, I guess, maximum to rent out. Now, that being said, also, it is also complaint driven. So they're not like they're looking on Airbnb and saying, oh, this person is renting out their whole entire house. Let's go knock on the door and slap the cuffs on them. They don't have the resources for that. So it's like investor beware in that sense. So if you don't make your neighbors happy, then they're going to tell on you. And they're going to say, hey, this person's running a short-term rental. Let's, tell them to stop doing that. So in Orlando, that's technically the law there. In more the secondary, tertiary markets, again, they'll have a strong stance and they'll say, no, you're not allowed to do this. But it's like, what are you going to do about it? It's not that you want to do anything bad. Like, you want to add value to the neighborhoods, and you want to have you don't want to upset your neighbors. So be smart about it. That's what I would say, right? Now you get to the actual subdivisions, which are not government controlled at all. The homeowners associations are privately managed. So in the subdivision that we live in right now, the gated community, doesn't matter what the state of Florida says, we say that you cannot have short-term rentals. And then we have much more power to put a lien on your property and enforce that rule, et cetera. But you'll see listings, Elizabeth, where some houses will say very clearly, no HOA, which is good because you don't have it's like a condo fee. It's like, so you don't have to worry about HOA. You don't have to worry about people telling you got to keep your grass down to a certain size and you have to have a certain aesthetic for your place. And then also you could do short-term rentals as long as you're not bothering anybody else.
Gotcha. Okay, that's awesome. That was fantastic. You are obviously a wealth of information on Florida, and I appreciate you sharing your insights. If someone wanted to learn more about investing in Florida, if they wanted to work with you, I think you have a way for people to connect and work with you, don't you?
I do. Funny you should ask. I just so happen to have a slide prepared for you. So I do have something coming up. I'm excited to do this because actually you're the first one that I'm sharing this with. I am coming to Canada, not coming to America, coming to Canada. So I do have, all those things I said, all the things that you could do before you come down to Florida. I'm actually covering those 4 bullet points in great detail in a 1-day workshop, which I've nicknamed the Snowbird Investor Bootcamp. And I'm coming to Mississauga, where I still have my previous family home is still Mississauga, and it's going to be near the airport. That one is February 10th. It's a Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I'm going to feed you. So for any of you who are in Elizabeth's tight-knit community, I'm going to feed you guys if you guys want to come out. That one is $997 US, because that is, I'm American corporation now. But if you stick around for a little bit longer, I'll share with you a special that I've designed just for Elizabeth's community. So there's 4 bonuses, 2 one-on-one strategy calls. So not me, but one of my strategy coaches will kind of onboard you and get you prepared for this and get to know what your strategy and point you in the right direction, what to expect for the training. So that's a $400 value. Bonus 2, I have a video course. You might see on my website, there's a few video courses. One is called Florida Property Funding Blueprint. So that one is about 4 to 5 hours of a live Zoom class that I had recorded, chopped it up into really tiny, short videos. That one, you get lifetime access to that. You could also get contracts and addendums. I am a real estate agent in the state of Florida. So basically, I took all my templates, bundled it up, and then make that available. I do put a value on that because it's the value of time, right? So if you wanted to, if you're an investor that says, you know what, I don't really use real estate agents, I'd like to go direct to seller, great. These are the forms that you're going to need then. You don't have to go looking around on the internet for them. And then bonus number 4, lifetime access to another video class that I recorded called the Florida Market Research and Deal Analysis. So I walked people through the top 12 Florida markets that I saw and have some economic data on those. But then also I walk people through in that class, that recorded class, how I look at properties and how I evaluate them. So all of that is a value of over $3,400. As I mentioned, 997 US dollars normally. But for you guys, it's not $997, it's just $497. So the main star of that would be being able to train with me for one day, the networking with other like-minded Canadians who have similar interests, and food, right? So food's always nice. So where can you go for this? Here's the website, www.snowbirdinvestor.com/event 0210 for February 10th, 0210. And then the coupon code, this is key. So I want to make sure I dwell on this for a sec. The coupon code that you input when you click on that is EK500OFF. So EK500 off. And there's only 10 available. Because I was mentioning to you, Elizabeth, before, I do have a couple other friends who have their followings as well that have been asking me for basically a year. It's like, when are you going to come to Canada and teach some of this stuff? So I've allocated the discount tickets, 10 for each group. And then if it runs out, then either reach out to me and tell me the coupon code has been filled or been used up, or reach out to Elizabeth and she'll point you to me. Then yeah, then hopefully we can still accommodate you if all the tickets are not sold out.
Awesome. There's so much value there, and that's a very reasonable price. Like an entire day, learning and preparing, plus the time with your coaches. That's pretty amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's going to be good. I'm really excited to do it because I've never taught this Florida stuff live in Canada, which it's like my homecoming in a sense. I've done it on Zoom like this, and
Yeah.
I like to have the palm tree in the background, but to really get in and shake people's hands and be like, yeah, let's have a conversation. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's awesome. And I'd love to come by on February the 10th. I mean, I'm assuming I'm in town, and I'd love to come by and see everyone, and maybe we can go for dinner, have some fun.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your insight and your knowledge. I'm just trying to. Sorry, hold on one second. There we go. So I really appreciate your time, your knowledge. You're obviously such a wealth of information, and I love that you and Sonia were such action takers. That when you went to Florida, you didn't sit around and hum and haw. You literally dove right in. You did your research, and you as a coach, you have other coaches too, don't you? Like, you really believe in the value of investing in yourself and your knowledge.
Oh yeah, tons. As I mentioned at the top, I know I stopped counting at 100,000 of investing in other coaches, mentors, and programs. So yeah, I practice what I preach for sure.
That's awesome. And that's one of the things I admire the most about you is your integrity and your desire to help others. I think we really connect on that a lot.
Well, thank you. Takes one to know one, Liz.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All the best, everyone. And when you're ready to escape the snow, then give Roel a shout out, whether it's on social media. We'll make sure all of his contact information is posted. And I would love to see you in February checking out Roel's course. Thank you so much for that special discount and the opportunity to be able to share your knowledge and information with my favorite colleagues, clients, and friends in the real estate community.
My pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much, Liz.
Fantastic. Thanks.